What you gonna do, brother, when Jeff Townsend Media runs wild on you?
Have you been searching for a podcast? Do you want to learn from some great content creators? Well, you've come to the right place. Indie Podcaster with your host, Jeff Townsend, the Indie Podcast Father.
All right. This is Jeff Townsend. Thank you for checking out another episode of Indie Podcaster. This podcast is made for podcasters and other content creators. Certainly don't consider myself a guru, nor either do any of my friends that will be featured in these episodes. But what we do like to do is talk content creation, pick each other's brains, and have a good time. I'm proud to mention that this podcast is sponsored by Indie Drop-In. Now, let me tell you something about Indie Drop-In. This is an awesome network that my friend Greg has created. What he does is drop episodes from independent content creators into his established podcast audience on his feed, and he shares your episodes to an audience that already exists. Yes, it's like free advertisement and promotion for your podcast. He spent a lot of time, money, and effort building it, and he already has an audience interested in the content, and he can certainly help you by sharing your content. It's great promotion. Go to indiedropin.com/creators and check it out. If you're a comedy, true crime, paranormal, or various other different kinds of podcasts, you can benefit from this. So I really encourage you, once again, go to indiedropin.com/creators and see if you can get your stuff featured on Indie Drop-In. We'll go back to the podcast here, Indie Podcaster. So what we've currently been doing is sharing content from 3 different projects that I'm involved in. The first is Good Morning Podcasters with my good friend Fuzz Martin. We also do some content on Podcasting Sucks. And then in these episodes, you will also hear some content from Podcasting Power Hour. Podcasting Power Hour is a live thing we do on Twitter Spaces. We get a whole bunch of great podcast minds together and we talk podcasting. So if you're a content creator, a podcaster, I think you'll take something away from every episode of the content I'm going to share with you. With that being said, make sure you check out Indie Drop-In and make sure you enjoy this episode. I think it's important that we all continue to learn and grow every day, and that will help us become even better content creators. That's certainly what I try to do, learn something new every day. I'm excited to share this content with you. I think it'll be a learning experience for you. Let's get to this episode, and I hope you have a great time listening to it.
Welcome to Podcasting Power Hour with your host, Jeff Townsend, a.k.a. the Indie Podcast Father. I'm your co-host, Greg, from Indie Drop-In Network. Podcasting Power Hour is recorded live every Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Twitter Spaces. Every week, an experienced panel of podcasters and other experts will tackle your podcasting questions. We will, of course, put links to all of our guests and any relevant information in the show notes. All right, let's get this party started.
Greg, accept the co-host invite. Have your eyes gone worse?
Can see him.
Sorry about that. I had to...
Which is 15 seconds more than it gives
What?
you.
That's true. He doesn't call me old, though. I don't know what he calls me. An idiot, I think.
I'd never say anything negative about anybody. I'm always on the receiving end.
I heard you were making podcasters quit. Oh, no, wait a minute. That was me. I did that. That was my fault.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I know. You're back. You're back.
Doesn't seem like it's stuck.
You did like a classic Oscar award-winning walk-off, and now you're back. Better than ever. Best episode you ever put up. Listened to it today. Thought it was great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'd actually been working on it before I had my little meltdown, but it was a necessary thing, and now I have a clearer picture of what I'm going to do for my next steps, and it's all thanks to Jeff and Jeff alone, the podcast father.
You got to have meltdowns, man. Just make sure you get a nap afterwards. That's what I do.
Well, Jeff was the doctor. You gotta give some credit to the person who caused the wound too, because without both, you'd still be in trouble.
Tanner, I was waiting for you to do an episode this week called "Maybe You Don't Have Body Dysmorphia. Maybe You Really Are Fat."
But that would have been an accurate thing for some people. I would never have done that, though. That's way out of my zone of expertise.
You guys are just too funny. Well, we might as well go ahead and get going here. Welcome to Podcasting Power Hour here on, is today the 11th? Hell, it's the 11th of July already. Incredible. We were gone last week celebrating the 4th of July, and we have some interesting guests today. I will start off with my co-host, Greg from Indie Drop-In. How you doing?
Hey, Jeff, how's it going?
It's going, man. Thanks for helping out.
Always. Thanks to everybody who showed up and who will drop by during the hour.
Shout out to Fuzz Mayor, the Fuzz Mayor, the Fuzzy Mayor, however you want to word it.
Mayor McFuzz. Yeah. What's up?
Hey, that's good to see you. Jim Mallard from the Mallard Report. 11 years in the on this podcast, right, Jim?
Something like that. But who's counting?
Hey, Jim.
One doesn't matter.
Have you heard Tanner's latest episode?
No.
Oh, that's how you make it 11 years.
You're such a fucking prick.
Wow. Speaking of potty mouth himself, Tanner Campbell. Good morning, podcasters. What's up, Tanner?
Oh, man, that one gave me a headache. I laughed too hard. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that. Glad to see everybody. Hopefully not everybody here wants me dead this week.
That's
We'll
it.
We'll see how it goes.
Is it true you're calling yourself the best kept secret in podcasting?
I would fucking never do that. And
That's amazing.
I would never do that. I would pay someone else to say that about me, but I would never think of myself.
Alive, so I'm not sure I want to be here, but I'm just here just for the fun.
Tanner, have you spray painted your EV20 gold yet?
And bedazzled it. I'm like a bokeh bitch.
We're spicy today.
And before we get to the special guest that's joining us for the first time, we will go ahead and introduce the Hall of Fame podcaster from the School of Podcasting. It's Dave Jackson.
This is a great lesson in marketing because I haven't heard Tanner's episode yet. And I'm so close to just ditching this and going, I'm like, it's got to be good. So when you get your audience going, I wonder what he's talking about. That's great marketing. So
it'll be amazing, Dave. You'll quit this episode and then you'll quit podcasting altogether.
Okay. All right. Listen, Dave, to paraphrase, I just said along the lines of, yeah, you might have imposter syndrome, but you also might be terrible. So, reflect on that. And if you suck, quit. Stop torturing.
Well, I just did a thing of if you want to have fun, if you want to make your head explode, go over to Kickstarter and see what people are trying to do to earn money and the reason they want money. Because it turns out that the reason why people's shows are not getting, huge, it's all the technology. It has nothing. I'm sure they're all fine on content. They just need more technology. And I was like, I don't think that's the case.
I don't know if I can do you any better than you just did yourself, Dave.
I sure wish it was technology, though, because I could use all the help I can get.
Okay, last but certainly not least, the special guest tonight is the co-founder, CEO of Quill, and co-host, Fatima. Did I say your name right? Fatima.
You did. Thank you for asking.
Thank you for joining.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I have to warn everyone, it's like 9:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'm, pretty narcoleptic at this hour. I'm like an early bedtime person, so not my prime hour, but still really excited to be here.
Oh, it's okay. Greg usually falls asleep within the first 10 minutes. So we won't take offense. Seriously, though, thank you for joining us. Special shout out to my little brother who's in the crowd, Ronnie. You may see him down there.
Hey, Ronnie.
Make sure you send him terrible DMs.
Let's give him noogies.
If I hear about this Twitter account anymore, jeez.
Snoochie booches.
Yeah, someone's cranky. Okay, Greg. I'm going to go ahead and let you kick us off with something. And if you have any question or anything you want to discuss, go ahead and start requesting the mic.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate that. So my topic of the week is really something I've been working on for the last couple of weeks. And Dave, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on this. The question is episodic podcast. We talked about it a little bit last time. Should we season or should we not season? And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to collect statistics of people who are episodic and season and try to understand if they lose audience on the break, how long it takes to come back from it, if there's no change, because, more and more podcasts are not set to auto download. I mean, certainly Apple is by default, but most, I think these days are not. So, I'm still on the fence. I talked to Fuzz about it a little bit today, and it didn't help.
I rarely am a help, Greg.
Yeah, so let's just start off there since, I'm selfish and it's of interest to me, and then hopefully we'll get questions.
I'll hop in. I as always, because it's a podcast question, it depends. So there's no one size fits all. I am not a huge fan. I am way too paranoid to do seasons, because just because I take time off doesn't mean my audience is going to well, I would listen to podcasts in the car today, but Dave took off, so I guess I'll just sit here in silence. No, they're going to go find something else to listen to, and I'm too much of a control freak. I'm worried they're going to find something else, and then I lose my spot in their routine. However, if you're doing some sort of, audio drama and it takes weeks and months to get this thing together and you're just completely crispy, obviously for health reasons, take a break. Don't, drive yourself into the ground. And I'm with Greg. I would love to know if people have taken seasons, they've taken time off. When they come back, how many people stayed, how many people didn't, things like that. I'd love to know that, because, again, that's my fear, is if you leave, you lose your spot. I mean, I used to listen to Mike Rowe when I took a shower, and that spot, and Mike started doing long shows. He changed his format. Yeah. And he changed his format from really short shows to really long shows. So now, and this sounds very weird, in the morning, I'm listening to Tanner Campbell, Good Morning Podcasters, as I shower. So,
you're not the only one, buddy.
That's it.
I don't know how to make a vomit noise. I'm not good at those.
And you listen to me when you fall asleep, right?
Yeah. So that's my thoughts. I get I think the other key there is, you said it was it's not season. The other phrase, it's not
episodic.
Yeah. Oh, so is it episodic, or is it the other one that you're talking about, where they have to?
So
Serial?
I'm talking about specifically episodic shows and introducing seasons, because seasons is typically for serials,
right?
And that's the way I've always podcasted. I've never had seasons. I've always done only episodic shows, and the way I see it is, or the way I saw it, which, as you can tell, I'm rethinking it. The way I saw it is that, let's say you get 4 weeks vacation at your job. I think a audience would be accepting of you taking, 4 weeks off or 5 weeks or whatever during the year, and getting best of shows or feed drops or some other content in place of yours, guest hosting, things like that. But to never be without an episode. That was my personal philosophy on things, because like you said, I'm super paranoid that maybe I'm, I think I heard it on your show, Dave, or you said it in here, I can't remember, but you said you never know if you're good enough to where people can't wait for you to get back, or if you're just part of their routine.
Well, I mean, I just did this with Practical Stoicism. I took 6 weeks off. And it's an episodic. Oh, what are we saying here?
Yeah, episodic.
Yeah, it's an episodic show. And I think from the outset, I explained that these were going to be done by book. People who listen to the show will know what I'm talking about. If not, it doesn't really matter. And so when I got to the end of the first book, I just said, all right, I'm gonna take a break. See you motherfuckers in 6 weeks. And when I left, I had the podcast was number 52 to 48. It bounced back and forth in the philosophy category on Apple Podcasts. That's when I left. I just came back 3 weeks ago. This is the third week that just passed this last Saturday. And it's now at number 37 in the philosophy category. And as far as listeners are concerned, I also switched podcast hosting providers when I came back. So I don't have a complete grasp on that yet, but it seems as though I went from about 15,000 monthly listens for a weekly show to what is looking more like almost twice that, 27, 30,000. In the absence, it's actually grown. It hasn't diminished, but that could be, this is one of the problems with the way that we can't track podcasts, is that hidden in that gain may be a significant loss. And I can't tell because you can't divide that up. Do you get what I mean when I say that?
Yeah, well, we know by your Apple statistics that your engaged listeners absolutely went down for some period of time, but your total listeners could have gone up. So people could have been testing it out or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But you did have a little dip for sure on Apple, which doesn't paint the whole picture because if you're like me, my show. One of my shows is like 60% iHeart. So when iHeart takes a dip, I get hit hard. So it just doesn't paint the whole picture, but I'd be interested to see in a month what your engaged listener stat looks like again.
Well, what does Fatima think? Since I feel like Fatima might have some pretty good insights here. She is, after all, the CEO of Quill, which is a pretty badass company. What do you think on this, Fatima?
Yeah, so I am in the camp of every podcast should probably be broken up into seasons similar to a Netflix or, Crave or Amazon Prime show. And here's my thinking. After every show that we produce, we like to take the time to do an autopsy on what's going well, do a deep dive into the analytics, and think about how we can make things bigger and better and how consumers are responding to the data. What is the average consumption rate like? Playing around with different formats? Are there particular drop off points? What insights can we draw? And if you're constantly focused on just creating new content, you're really not going to take the time, take those 4, 6 to 8, or however long you need weeks to actually, do a little bit of a dissection on your content and think about ways that you can change it up for your audience. And, we all know when with podcasting, what really matters is consistency. Consistency is key. And, for SEO patterns and your users are looking for you to drop content at a particular time. And if you're producing a weekly show or a bi-weekly show, it's a pretty tall order to constantly be, keeping up with the content without taking breaks from your episodes. And so I'm always in the camp of, I think people should break up their shows into seasons, and they can be broken up from anywhere from 6 to 24 episodes, and then letting your users know after a season is complete that you'll be back in 4 to 8 weeks with new content dropping. So please subscribe to our show. And that's really how we've always done it.
And Fatima, it's not literally that you need to break it into seasons. What you're saying is whether you're actually splitting them into seasons in your podcast hosting provider, or you're just setting the expectation that breaks are taken.
Exactly.
That's what's important.
Exactly. That's exactly it. It's so that your users are, aligned with what your posting and publishing schedule is, and that in between content, you'll take some time to go away and come back with like a fresh perspective or a rebrand, as we like to call it. And if you look at a lot of the NPR, Gimlet, Wondery productions, I mean, they usually, will take away their content after a set number of episodes and come back with a new structure or a new concept, a new theme. And a lot of work goes into that, research and pre-production phase and doing a deep dive into your analytics. And I just don't think it's feasible to be proactively creating content, at least not good content, while you're also thinking of ways on how you can make your show better.
And that's why she's top 30 under 30, folks. You should be listening to her.
I want to get Jim Mallard and Dave. Dave Jackson's probably, the rest of his hairs went gray, but hearing this. But no, Jim Mallard, you have a live show every week. What are your thoughts?
You're doing terrific, Jim.
I've got to get used to this mic button that I have to push to talk with. Not used to it. I'm used to talking to myself. It's different, though. I think that depends on what type of show you're doing. I like something. I guess I've just fallen in that habit and that comfort level, and I know if I take too many weeks off, that those bad things start to happen. I start getting lazy.
Well, that's part of it, right? It's like
drama or anything like that. I'm just doing a one-off. I'll pretty much come off as one-off interview. So
I think part of it is how you feel about it. I think Fatima and Dave and everybody up here would agree that you should take breaks when you need them. But there are people who, I do a daily and a weekly and another weekly. And for me, doing those are like, that is a kind of therapy to me almost to be involved in that. It sounds like maybe Jim is a little bit the same there. Like he likes the work. I feel like this question.
Like that's my, when you've got the family and the wife and the kids and all this other stuff going on, and that block of time, Tuesday night, my time. Like I get up in the studio and all that the first world problems go away for a couple hours. And I get to focus on something else for a little bit. So it keeps me fresh with everything else. So, which is good.
Well, that's what Dave said, right? It depends.
Well, I don't think breaks are really the question, right? I think Fatima hit it on the head. Like I'm thinking that you need a delineation between what you have done and what you're gonna do, because if you don't take a break, how are you going to put a line in the sand if you want to change something major, right? You're just going to go from episode 140 to episode 141 with like a new co-host or a new theme or a new something. To me, I think, I was thinking back on my past podcasting, and just as a basic example, on my fandom podcast that I had for a long time, we started covering like science fiction, fantasy, and like superhero stuff, DC, Marvel, like everything fandom. And then we whittled it down over time to mostly science fiction and like Marvel. And it's really awkward and like a weird transition over time. Like if you started at episode 1 and then listened to episode like 200, they're completely different shows. We even lost a co-host. And so, breaks, yes, but I do think that, I'm leaning more toward even creating seasons in your hosting, breaking it up, putting a line in the sand. It gives you something to market to. It gives you can get some new cover art. You can redefine your niche. Fatima, is that kind of what you're saying? Like give you a chance to just like almost not quite start over, but iterate.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Iterating is like a really good way of putting it. It's just, polling your audience, surveying them, collecting feedback and insights from them, finding a way to engage with them further. It's a lot of work. And I think professional podcasters need to spend more time doing a deeper dive into their analytics and seeing where the drop-offs are, where are the trends pointing to, what can they be doing to increase the production quality of their show, or play around with different themes and concepts. And, is there a whole new slew of guests that they want to source? There's so many different ways to take your show to the next level. And I just think that sometimes podcasters get caught in this cycle of just constantly create without thinking about, well, who are we creating this show for? And it's better to be something for someone rather than everything to everyone. And sometimes you really need to take a step back and be a little bit more introspective about that.
Well, Fatima, and I mean absolutely no disrespect by this. In fact, this is actually a compliment. You are operating at a level that I think most podcasters, at least I'll speak for myself, and I'll speak for Dave because he listens to me in the shower. You are operating at a level that other people aren't. And when I say that, I think I mean in regards to your team and the assets you have and the resources you have. So for doing what you just described, how might you suggest that an independent podcaster like myself, or even, I know Dave's got a small team, so I'm kind of making fun, Dave, I'm sorry, or most of the other people up here, how would you suggest that those one team or the one person or two person teams do what you just suggested? Because I think you're right.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because, actually that's one of the reasons we launched the Quill Podcast Awards. We were so tired of the same, production companies or, the NPR, the Gimlet, the Wondery podcasts of the world getting all the recognition and profiling. And we're like, there's some amazing indie content created shows that just aren't, being able to get the same limelight because they just don't have those millions of dollars in production budgets. And I would say some of my favorite podcasts are definitely the ones that are independently created, the ones that you typically listen to in the shower and aren't super scripted and rehearsed. And you can tell that there's, a lot of love that's gone into creating the show. In terms of what you can be doing as a one-person team, we're we have two companies. One is Quill, which is absolutely, as you mentioned, a production company that works with Fortune 500 brands to launch their branded content. But we also have a company called Co-Host. It's a product that we built for indie content creators and professional podcasters. And that's really what we had in mind. It's like when you're a one-person shop creating content, but you still want to take your show to the next level, what technology can you use? Someone at the beginning of this call mentioned this. I think it was Tanner, which is you need to have the right tech in place in order to understand the ROI of your podcast, who's listening to your show, and then from there, how do you find your audience? And I think that's this is a shameless plug, but that's what we're really doing with our product Co-Host. It's $19 a month, so it's not like you need a whole team of people around you, but it gives you access to data. And even if you're not on our hosting platform, using platforms that allow you to see where your downloads are coming in from, where you need to double down on your marketing efforts, and how you can further engage with your listeners. I think that's really the future of podcasting.
Preach. That was awesome. Thanks, Fatima.
Buzz, do you have any thoughts before we go to Ed has his hand up and Michelle is requested to speak? Anybody else that has or comments?
I'm supposed to
go ahead and request.
I'm supposed to go after Fatima.
Yeah, good luck.
Cool. Thanks, Jeff. I think the only thing I would say is when taking breaks on an episodic type of show, the type of content you make matters, I guess, in terms of that, right? So even if it's episodic, if you're doing current event type stuff, people aren't going to be able to go check out your back catalog. Tanner, your Stoic podcast is evergreen, and it's something that people can walk away and it's kind of like reading an audiobook almost, where you can set it down and pick it back up. Whereas if you're doing something that deals with current events or anything that's in the now, you're taking a break could be kind of deadly to that people picking that back up and turning it back on in the shower. So that's when I was talking to Greg earlier today, my wife's podcast is very niched, and it's geared toward teachers, specifically toward helping teachers find free tech tools that they can use in their classrooms. And so she's speaking only to teachers, and mostly to teachers in the U.S. And so we do seasons. We do we're going on our 5th season, and we see a drop off at the end of the year when teachers are fed up and don't feel like learning about teaching anymore, and or talking about teaching or having anything to do with that. So we turn the show off right around the end of the school year here in the Midwest, and then we'll drop an episode in the middle of the summer in order to remind people that we exist, and then we'll pick it back up at the beginning of the school year, and our audience bounces back very quickly. But again, it's really topic based. So that's all I got.
Fatima's was way better.
Yeah, no shit, Tanner. Thank you.
Man, Tanner really sucking up here. This is a little over the top. I'm just kidding. Ed, you had your hand up for a while. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just an incompetent hobbyist, but recently I split my 4 years of podcasts into seasons just by year, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. And I've noticed that I'm actually getting more listeners to older episodes now that I've kind of made them more easier to find because I broke them into specific years. And then I've noticed that every time I've taken a break, I'm about to take my 3rd break, in 2 years, and I've never really had any problems with people being patient waiting for the next episode. I don't know if it's because of me or because of what I'm talking about, but I've never had these problems. I just wanted to throw that in as someone who is probably the least wisest of anybody talking right now.
I really like how Mark Asquith, when he takes a break, he always says, "Hey, I'm going to be taking, a 6-week break, and I'll be back, and I'm doing it because I'm going to spend time with my wife and kids or whatever, or working on a project, whatever that might be." I really like when a host is
that's unfair.
Upfront about why.
You can't use Asquith as
And
an example.
I'm actually, speaking of that, I'm going to put my mic on mute because my daughter's going to come hug me goodnight. So go ahead amongst yourselves here.
you can't use Asquith as an example because his audience is the same as my audience as podcasters. And there's like a certain amount of understanding that, like, Dave, if you tell a bunch of podcasters you're taking a break,
so
they're just like, oh, cool, I get it.
Yeah, that's it. But I do think that's a key ingredient, though. The problem is when you just disappear. And any time, if you take your car into a mechanic and they go, yeah, it's going to take about a half hour. So you sit in the waiting room and now it's 45 minutes and now it's an hour. The more you don't know what's going on, the worse the thoughts become. You're like, oh my God, it's going to be $8 million. And so when you just leave your podcast and it's like, well, that was weird. He was doing one every week. And then all of a sudden, I don't know. I hope he's okay. I hope he doesn't have some disease or whatever. So I think one of the keys to a successful break is letting your audience know, hey, I'm taking a break and I'll be back on this date. And then they know, oh, okay. So they know when to come back.
Anyone else that wants to join in the discussion or have a question or anything podcasting, go ahead and request. That being said, we'll go to you, Michelle.
Me, Michelle. Hi, my name is Michelle Jackson. I run an award-winning show called Michelle is Money Hungry. And I actually want to talk about both the taking a break and changing the format. I've been podcasting for about 4 years. I was doing daily shows. I'm in the personal finance space, so there's always money things coming up and pop culture stuff. And there came a point where I just got tired of having to produce the content weekly, but I still wanted the show to release weekly. And so finally, just for my own creative juices and just timing, I changed it to seasons and designed content specifically to address an issue, like do a deep dive. So right now I'm literally doing a 13-week series all about the student loan forgiveness policy. What I've discovered is the downloads have tripled. The feedback has been incredible. I get sponsors for this content. So it's easier for me to get sponsors for content when it's siloed like that. I'm in the process of preparing for the fall when I'm doing a entire fall all about women and money. And I think it's going to be much, much easier, again, to get sponsors. The pacing's better. So I did all the recording in 2 weeks, and it's just freed up an amazing amount of time throughout the summer, even though episodes are releasing weekly. So if you're wondering like how people react to you changing what you're doing, for me, like it's been overwhelmingly positive. I also take breaks. I think the past 3 years in particular have been very stressful. So I've taken breaks like for 6 weeks, 2 months. And I just let people know, hey, I'm taking a break. I have a multimedia platform though. So by that, what I mean is I have a website, I do freelance writing, I have other things that I'm doing. So people do know I'm out there and doing other projects. But I think if you just speak to your audience, they're pretty open to it. And because I'm able to market these seasons better, it's just been a wonderful experience. I highly recommend it if you're wondering if it's a thing to do. So similar to one of the speakers before, I would do an episode a week, maybe some pop culture moment and money happened, or maybe there was a policy that happened. And it just got to the point where it wasn't as sustainable as before. And this has been so much better.
Michelle, a couple questions if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Do you think that your downloads have tripled because you've serviced a underserviced niche, or do you think these are personal finance listeners who just like the topic? How do you think that happened?
I just think that I don't think it's so much an underserved niche. I just think that it's a very I'll say it this way. I do think you're right in thinking that maybe people aren't talking about that specific topic as a part of a show. Like I haven't necessarily seen other shows doing that. I think it's relevant. So it's something that's top of mind right now, but it's also evergreen because, quite frankly, I don't think that I think that whatever policy changes occur or don't occur, it's still an issue that's going to be with us for years. So it's an evergreen piece of content that impacts a lot of different people. So I think that's part of the reason why there's so much interest in it. Women and Money, same thing. I've gotten a lot of buzz around people being excited to listen to the show and the concept that I'm doing for that series. And that one's kind of ballsy because I'm going to do probably the whole fall is all about women and money and different moments in their money. So just touching on like doing a deep dive in conversations that people probably would like to have but aren't having, I think is helpful. Also with my show, I don't do the boring, like, this is how you invest. I think it's so boring. And most shows in personal finance, I find, do a lot of the same content. And so I think it's helpful for me in terms of like the response to the content that I do, because I approach it very differently. So for example, my most downloaded episode was about the personal finances of a sex worker. Why? Because no one talks about that, but it's really an important conversation about body autonomy and policy. And so I think in creating your content, you have to consider what's interesting for people that's not being covered, and why would it be interesting to people like who are going to listen. I don't know that it's just personal finance people listening. I think it's people who have student loans. I think it's people who are pissed off that people might get loan forgiveness. I think there are people who have very strong feelings both ways. I think there are people who have no idea how it works. And so that series is touching on a lot of those different types of information. And then I'm marketing that content across my platforms.
And
you'll be. Oops, sorry.
No. Go ahead, Greg. I thought that was it.
No. I was saying you're gonna be a great case study, because this is exactly what I'm hoping to learn. Because what you're doing is, you're staying in the same general niche, but you're moving around in like your focused niche. So when in the fall, I might DM you and just see how it's going.
Please do
for my own.
Please do. And
personal knowledge.
Absolutely do. And I'm in the process of, by the way, this side note, I kind of quickly mentioned that it's easier to find partners for this content because you can identify organizations or people who are really aligned with it. So right now I am pitching for sponsors and partnerships for the Women in Money episodes. And I'm hoping that I can get that all taken care of before they go live. So the goal is to raise a certain amount of money, pay for my time and for the content, and then release them with those partnerships. So we'll see how it goes. It went well for last year, and so I think it's going to do better this year.
And if I could just give like a quick vote of confidence, there's only two people I listen to who talk about money. And one of them is my girl, Katie from Fort Collins. And the other one is Michelle, who is from Denver.
Oh.
And they both live where I live, and they're both killer. So if you don't subscribe to Money with Katie or to Michelle's podcast and you care about finances, especially if you're a woman, I guess. But even if you're a fucking white dude like me, it's
just made my day.
Useful stuff.
I would never talk to Tanner about money, though.
No.
He needs all the podcast help he can get.
Yeah. Don't talk to me about money. I'm bad with money. It's not your fault, Bill.
Podcasting Power Hour is part of Indie Drop-In Network. If you are a podcaster looking to grow your listeners, check out IndieDropIn.com. Indie Drop-In is always free, and we have opportunities right now for comedy, true crime, scary, and paranormal podcasts. Just go to IndieDropIn.com to learn more. So one piece of anecdotal information in favor of seasons is on Indie Drop-In, when people send me episodes to feature, I always say, send me multi-part episodes if you can. I have noticed across my platform that multi-part episodes outperform single-part episodes. And I just think that people love stories and stories that go on for a long time. So having a season focused on a topic that has a story kind of woven through many episodes, 6, 12, 24, however many, I just can't see how it would be bad. It can only be good. I think the only fear is maybe not even real of losing listeners. So it was a great comment. Thank you so much, Michelle. Like, that cleared it up. That helped me so much.
Anybody have anything else to comment on that before we go to Pixie?
Yeah, just one thing. I want to be mean for a second. I want to be angry Tanner for a minute. These motherfuckers are listening for free. If you want to take a break, fucking take a break.
I don't know about you, Tanner, but every week that I'm off is hundreds of dollars in ad revenue that I miss.
That's because you monetize your podcast like a fool, but that's okay. We can talk about that.
I wasn't going to say thousands or 10,000s because I'm not you.
Pixie, what's going on?
What's going on, guys? So we did seasons. We are getting ready for season 4. First season was us, just having fun with the hobby. So it was 25 episodes. The first episode, our introduction. The 25th episode, that was our wrap up. And so then we took breaks off between each season, kind of working on our studio, working on sound quality, working on ourselves as podcasters. When we came to season 2, we did new music, new artwork. And so you could see a progression every season that we've done. We've been able to get guests on. We've also been able to add video to each thing that we've done. We've added a little bit better stuff, better quality. There's a connection between me and my co-host that didn't start out at the beginning. And so, each of the episodes they all tie in together in a bigger picture, but each of the seasons have their own little, season 3 was down and dirty. So the next season is going to be like stripper superheroes, like our origin. Are we villains or are we superheroes? So because me and my co-host have a knack for comic books, that's where we're going to take our next season when we come back to it. We're already planning. I already have 6 interviews lined up here, local where I'm at, for my podcast. So I think taking breaks, being able to understand how good you are, what you understand and what you're coming back to at a podcast, it really does help and grow and develop you as an individual. I'm still not very good sometimes. And I think that having a partner in your podcast does help. And having seasons really can help somebody. I'm glad that I have seasons. That way I can take a break. I can do the things that I want to do and not be overwhelmed. And I can also count down the seasons, giving people a rough estimate of what's going on. I only noticed, I'm looking at my analytics, I only noticed that they've only slightly dropped, and I'm retaining a lot of people because I'm still marketing the podcast and I'm still doing throwback, Thursdays, and letting people know that there's good content for people to listen, no matter if we're putting things out new and fresh or it's just stuff in the past. That's what I had to say. As I killed a room.
Oh, I was waiting for Tanner to talk because he has to comment.
I mean, I like to talk. I'm a fucking podcaster, Jeff. Fuck you.
Well, someone's a little bit angry. All right, we have somebody else requesting. Let's see. Trying to make sure that you're a content creator. So if you, send me a DM if I'm not accepting you, because I'm trying to vet through people here. Sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
Well, before we move off this topic, who was the woman that was talking about she took seasons?
That's Pixie.
Pixie, okay. Pixie, awesome. My question is, because as I was listening to that, you changed your music, you changed this, you changed a lot of stuff, which is great. If you want it, I always say your podcast is a recipe, not a statue. How do you determine, because the only thing I didn't hear you work on was your content. I went out and researched my audience to find out what they really wanted to hear. Are you doing any of that kind of stuff?
Yes, we're always engaged with who our core audience is. I've known my core audience from basically episode 20 until now. So I know who's actively listening to my podcast because of my analytics. I know who I'm talking to because we do a lot of to and fro with people who are engaged. We send out surveys. I send out stickers. I do a lot of, if you give me feedback, I give you said item. So it's kind of
nice.
It really is. My podcast is spicy and it's all about strippers. So we don't have a lot of female listeners.
Oh shit! Dave's shower selection just changed.
That's it.
We know who's listening to our podcast. It's men ages 25 to 55 that have or wanted to go into a strip club, and they really like the kind of content that we bring out. I've had a couple of people reach out and say, hey, you need to drop your co-host and it needs just to be, female strippers. And I tell them time and time again, the show is not a show unless there's the two of us.
Those are some thirsty ass fans.
They really are. They really are. They're like, you need to have less men talk. And I was like, wait, it's bad. But we do. We know who our target audience is. We know who we're marketing to. And especially me here on Twitter, I know who's going to gravitate towards my podcast.
Nice. Yeah. You definitely sound like you're definitely focused and targeted, which is great. So I just, when you were talking about all the other stuff, I was like, I didn't hear a thing about the content. So I just wanted to make sure. And you are definitely headed in the right direction.
Thank you, Dave. Chris, you requested to speak. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just finishing up that DM for you there. No, I appreciate that. No, I really just hopped on because Pixie has, had nothing but great things to say about this space, and I try to listen when I can. Today was just one of those random days where, I had the day off, at least from side gigs, but that doesn't mean that I didn't have like a stack of admin tasks to get through. And my latest episode, getting that published, was one of them. So I at least did accomplish that and forced myself to make new episode art for it this time, which took a lot longer than it should have. But I wanted to ask, because this has just been one of those, it's been in my gut all day. And I feel like if I don't talk about it, I'm not going to get it out. I really went off the rail. I mean, I just threw away the script and I just said, you know what? I know we're supposed to be doing part 3 of our Timothy Leary series right now, but because of what happened last week, I wanted to kind of recap what I went through as a lobbyist and activist, forming like a 2-day protest at our state legislature that actually led to like a piece of legalization passing in real time to save the hemp industry from this like, weird deadline that they put on North Carolina version of the Farm Act back in 2018. And I wanted to use that as like a motivational piece to let people know that, yes, it's okay to be angry, but if we put that anger towards something productive, we can still make change, especially on the state level right now. But it's just a lot more dropping of the F-bomb than normal. And I call out some people, like some rather important people, on some very specific things that I probably should have gone easier on them. But I also feel like my listener base, as small as it is, does kind of grow from people expecting me to be as passionate and as raw and as honest as I always am. But it's such a drastic change from my usual just, reading the story that I've kind of already built up in my head when I'm covering like a specific individual, or if I'm covering like a specific bill or a topic. This was more about me sharing like a blow for blow emotionally of what happened the day that we watched like all this occur in real time. But when I went back and listened to it, and it's already published, so it's not like I can take it back. But when I went back and listened to it, I couldn't tell if I was disappointed in how much I let the language get away from me, or if I was kind of just, I don't want to say justifying it, but feeling like it was justifiable in the moment because of it being kind of a off the rails train of thought, very passionate, improv moment of audio that turned into an episode that I think I'm proud of, but I'm still not 100% sure. And I didn't know if anybody had any advice of how to look at that like objectively, just from the point of like, did I go overboard with the language?
You're asking this group? You probably didn't go overboard with the language, at least for us. Here's what I'd say. If your audience is used to X and you suddenly deliver Y, and I talk about this frequently in regards to politics, I personally think it's a really fucking bad thing and disrespectful thing to do, to drop a political discussion in the middle of a podcast about comic books because something happened. Because I feel like those people might be showing up to your show to escape that shit. It's everywhere. That doesn't sound like exactly what you did, but it sounds like what you did was in alignment rather with your core audience, but was just a little bit different and a little bit more, let's say, graphic, wanton, and gratuitous in the language, which is probably okay. But if you're going to do that, and I think you maybe should continue to do that if you feel passionate about it and it relates to your audience, maybe have like once a month or once every other week and publish it as a I don't know, an after dark episode, or I hate to use the word bonus. I hate that fucking word, but just an episode that is labeled as being distinctly different as the normal episodes, but that some of your audience is still going to like. I don't think there's a problem with that.
Chris, why don't you take a look at your average consumption rate for that episode and see if people dropped off in the first 10, 15, 20 minutes, or if they stayed till the end. If they stayed till the end, well, there's your answer. And if you found that they were dropping off in the 50th percentile, then you probably went overboard.
And I feel like there's a bit of good enough basis set with, because we're only like 5 episodes in, but the podcast idea and the people kind of building up the audience waiting for it to happen has been going on for about 2 years with the whole movement. So there was already kind of like a built-in fan base that kept asking for this over and over and over again. And I finally, with, again, Pixie's encouragement and help she was one of the first people that I met with all that, finally actually getting me to sit down and record the first episode. And I got lucky enough to like fall into one of the most amazing producers I've ever worked with. I mean, he doesn't charge me a dime because he believes in the movement that much and what the podcast is for. I just record the audio as like one stream of conscious thought with some scripting. I email it to him and he has like a completed episode with full scoring music that he writes himself. He knows how to read my cues audibly. Like if I start going into a bit, he knows exactly what music needs to play before then. And I don't ever have to communicate with him. It's like he just already knows all of my thoughts without me having to say it. And I hope to God nothing ever happens to him, because if so, like I wouldn't just not have a podcast. Like he is so much more of the talent behind my show than I am. I'm just the one that kind of fell into a topic that, he could speak passionately about, but my audience base turns in because they're always waiting for me sometimes to snap, I feel like, because it's always there under the surface. And people have told me that like they like the kind of manic calm of the episodes because they can always tell that I'm holding back a bit. And so I'm just hoping that once they realize when I'm not holding back and I talk about punching a senator in the dick more than once, that's not going to just like scare them away forever. But I don't think that it will.
Yeah, you're the Lewis Black of cannabis advocacy. Congratulations. Stick with it.
In my case, I was getting ready to record an episode, and this is back when Joe Rogan had just moved to Spotify, and an article came out and said something like 79 episodes of Joe's show had been pulled. And I opened up the curmudgeon handbook, and it said, oh, I must do a podcast about open RSS. It's like it's in my DNA. I had to do it. And I just went off on freedom of speech and watch out. They're all going to come and get, it's all great. They're going to come take our guns. They're going to take our free speech, blah, blah, blah. And I just and I had a listener of mine that said, I tune into your show to get away from that shit. Like, I don't want to talk politics. So I think it was Tanner that said that. And that was very much a case where they tuned in for A and I gave them Z and they're like, yeah, no, don't do that. So and it was very much just like it was unscripted. And then I tried to edit it into some sort of so it sounded like I had put some thought into it and I hadn't. And it's one of those where you get done, you're like, oh, I just chewed up all the time where I was supposed to do something that I had planned. And now I'm either staying up till 3 a.m. to do the right stuff, or I'm going to put out the stuff that I just, vomited out of my face. And so in my case, my audience, and it was one person, but if I have one person that contacts me, I'm like, okay, that's probably 10 people. And whoever said that, that's a good suggestion. I should go back and look and see how far people listen. But my one person was like, yeah, don't do that. Don't do that anymore.
That was Fatima. Dave, pay attention.
My old radio program directing mentor, Mike Elliott, rest in peace, just went to his celebration of life yesterday. But he used to always tell me, what you don't say won't hurt you. So I guess that's just a piece of advice for editing is if you feel like you went over the edge when you're recording, it's great that we're all doing this. And most of the time, most of us here are doing this recorded and editing in post. You don't have to leave that stuff in. And even if it takes you some extra time, if you're going to offend your audience, you can pull that out. So, and that's coming from Mayor McFuzz, a local politician who has an absolutely no politics rule on his show. So that's just my advice.
All right. Or hear me out here. Or by behaving
offend the whole fucking industry. Yes.
By behaving the way you wish to behave, you will repel the people who find that repulsive, and you will attract the people who like you the most. That's what brands do, right? Strong brands repel people and they attract people. And I don't know, Chris, you're 5 episodes in, which made me giggle when you said that after asking such a serious question. So I think you're probably doing fine, bud.
And I know it's a serious question for only being 5 in, and I expect people to giggle at that. It's just there's been so many people that have been dangling like massive funding and financing and support over my head for like the last 2 years with a number of projects where it's like there's been the podcast, and then there's supposed to be a book that I'm working on, and then I'm also supposed to be doing another video project for a different company that all revolve around the same movement. None of anyone who's paid me for any of this, mind you. They just all kept telling me, this is what you need to do. This is what we believe you were meant to do. So by the time I actually finally got down to do it, I feel like if I didn't put out like the most polished, perfect product I could, I was somehow failing them based on all the support they were giving me over the last 2 years. And it did kind of create a complex when I started.
In Stoicism, we call that ascending to an untrue belief. Don't ascend to untrue beliefs, man.
Take all that support.
If you don't know that's true, have a conversation, find out if it's true. Maybe they're really happy with what you're doing.
Yeah. Take that support to Whole Foods and try to buy an avocado with it. Ask for money.
I don't know what that means.
All right, we got 3 people up here waiting. Tanner, you're so stoic. Man, I don't know how you do it. Uncontrolled Chaos Podcast, you were next in line. What you got?
Okay, well, first of all, what's up, everybody? Spuds here from Uncontrolled Chaos Podcast. Hey, Pixie, and I recognize somebody else. I forgot who it was. The big question I have is that my show, Uncontrolled Chaos Podcast, is a brutally honest podcast with a splash of bullshit, to the extent that we treat it as if, like, okay, you're seeing a group of nut jobs that are just sitting there at a bar, you know, having some beers or your choice of alcoholic beverage, and you're just, listening in on their conversation. Like Pixie can voucher that, of how weird my show is. The big question I have is promoting on social media. Now, I can tweet until my thumbs go numb, but I'm getting like zero interaction. Is there a social media that's like, oh, this is the social media to use for promoting podcasts, or am I doing something wrong? I'm trying to figure it out, because I've been doing this for like what, almost 100 and was it 140 episodes so far, I think. I don't remember, but I'm just trying to figure out like the tips. Anybody that has any tips on promoting on social media?
Can you tell us what your last post was?
Yeah, I posted it right up there. It was a clip from the latest episode where I posted a clip from the episode, and it was just a little tidbit, like it's right up there if you look up top of the screen.
Yeah, I'm in the space, so I'm not off the loop.
No. Dave,
quick.
at the very top of the space, there's something called
Uncontrolled
the nest.
chaos. I see. Yeah.
Okay, real quick, while we're all reviewing that, I know Fatima has a hard stop here. She has another commitment to go to. Did want to give you a minute to talk about the work you're doing and the recently launched co-host and all that, because I appreciate you taking your time to jump on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't remember who was just asking about social before this, but I think you can't really be on all of the platforms, and certain channels are really going to resonate with your content and certain channels won't. And I think I'm a huge proponent of using tracking links to see, where your downloads and listeners are coming in from, so you can really double down on those platforms rather than trying to do everything and trying to be everywhere. And sometimes it's the audience that you're really trying to attract won't be on any of those channels, and that's okay too. Um, in terms of the work that we're doing, as I mentioned, I own a production company. We work with Fortune 500 brands like Microsoft and PwC and Expedia to launch their branded content. But we also have a product that we built for professional podcasters. It's a product that was built by podcasters for podcasters, because we saw a lot of gaps and pain points within the industry. Found that the product itself is really catering to folks like yourselves who are really trying to take their show to the next level and understand who's listening to their podcast, how are they listening to it, and where can they find new audiences. And really, that's the goal that we're trying to achieve is help podcasters draw in their qualified audience, because we all know that podcasting is a marathon, not a sprint. But if there's anything that we can do to try to accelerate growth, I'm all for it. So thank you so much, Jeff and Greg and Tanner and everyone, for having me. It's a great group of folks, and this was a lot of fun. So looking forward to tuning in the future as a listener. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for joining. Really do appreciate it. All right, we'll get back, Dave, to you. Did you get a chance to review Uncontrolled Chaos Post?
I did, and I guess
Uncontrolled chaos has left the room. So
yeah, it didn't make me want to click on it. I guess that's it.
It was very self-promotional, and it's a lot of posting of links of the show and not interacting with people or the type of audience. It's not audience interaction. It's just promotion.
Say what it's about necessarily.
Look, this room's actually a perfect example of this. Like Jeff and Greg and Fuzz and me, all have podcasts. Jeff and Greg and myself have podcasts about podcasting. Are we posting on? You'll never see me share a fucking link to my show. Well, that's not true. I use Zapier to once a day tweet out, "Hey, in case you missed it, here's today's episode." But that's automated. I don't actually do that. What we're really doing is showing up to this space to interact with the community. And if you're going to be on Twitter, I mean, that's pretty big for Twitter, especially if you're going to be on Twitter, you should be interacting with the community, providing value almost in like a whole nother place. This is one of the biggest problems that podcasters have is that they think, like, oh, I'm a podcaster. That's it, motherfucker. That's the product. I'm going to tweet about it. I'm going to share it. You're going to love it. I don't have to do anything else because I already make a fucking podcast. That's not really how it works.
Any thoughts on that are less vulgar, perhaps?
Well, and like Fatima said, it's not a case of which one is the best one. The best one is the one where your audience is. So my audience is somewhat older, so I'm doing Facebook and Twitter. I'm not going to be doing much on TikTok, although I still think maybe I should, but I know.
Oh my God, please. Please, Dave.
I've got a $2 bill for Dave to use on TikTok.
The Chinese know enough about me already. That's enough. And I'm not dancing, so if that's what you're thinking, that's not happening.
Dang it.
Yeah, sorry.
We'll have to figure.
Michelle, what you got?
I have a slightly different take on searchability and where people should be. I looked at the post. I have no idea what it's about. And when I'm sharing my content, I share it in the way that people would be searching for it. I think SEO is a skill. I think that podcasters way underestimate how important it is to make it simple for their audience to discover them. And so if I were into your topic, I wouldn't know based on this tweet at all. And so what I would say is make it super freaking easy for us to understand what you're doing in your tweets so that because I get a lot of traffic referrals from Twitter, to be candid. I'm very active on Twitter. I make money off of Twitter from projects. People refer people to my content. So I do think that social media can be leveraged to get people to your content. But I also have a website. I have other people who are directing people to my content, but I also really use search engine optimization. So even in a show about chaos, there should be a theme or underlying conversation for each episode. So what would I type in order to find that episode? So for example, I'm a huge Veronica Mars fan. No, I'm going to use a different one. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. And if I were doing a whole season about Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, I would have very specific things like an episode about Spock. Spock is hot. He is in this season. Anyway, my point is other people are probably typing that in. And then I would have an episode specifically about how Spock is hot. Like, don't make it hard for us to figure out what you're talking about and to find you. And I think a lot of podcasters way underestimate searchability in their show titles and the URLs they're using if they have a website like I do. And you have to use SEO so that search engines so that humans can type in the search and find you.
She's my new favorite person, guys.
I was thinking the same thing. And, we got some spicy content from Spock in these recent Star Treks.
Yeah, rock, paper, scissors, Spock is hot.
Ed, I don't know what you're going to say, but we'll give it a shot.
Well, I'm just looking at this post that Spud posted, and to me, the way it reads is that it's reading specifically to people who already know about the show and listen to it. For me, who doesn't know the show at all, I don't know who Spuds 82 is. I don't know what Uncontrolled Chaos is. And then I see, hot titty sweat on the picture, and that doesn't make me want to try it out.
How the fuck is it possible that at least me, I looked at that, didn't even see hot titty sweat. I think I might be gay, guys. I think something's happening.
Don't tell your wife.
Oh, no.
But I'm just saying is that, if you look at Tanner's post, you look at my post, you look at Pixie's post, we're not just posting to the people we already have. We're trying to reach out to those who haven't discovered us. So you need to get out of the mindset of promoting yourself specifically, or, what is this episode about? Is it about hot titty sweat? What do you mean by hot titty sweat? You're not, what is the show about? And that's where I think you have your biggest problem, is that your description doesn't tell us what your show is about. Your post doesn't tell us what your episode's about. And that's maybe why you're having trouble finding new listeners.
I mean, at least use the hashtag hot titty sweat. Make a community, man.
I mean, if you put that in the text, hot titty sweat, you'd have much better interaction than we think Spuds has had too much caffeine.
Is everyone coming off mic just to say that? Okay, we all hear it. We all hear it.
What do you mean? HTS?
That's it. HTS.
That's a new boy band out of Korea.
Heather, go ahead.
I wanted to say there's some balance there, though, right? So, to Tanner's point, like where he said, like he never pushes a podcast episode out, but then by the same token, like you're talking about, you want to engage with your audience and stuff like that. Like how, if they aren't subscribed and you are trying to target those new people, how do they find you? Like how do they discover? Oh, like there's a podcast there. Like I'm trying to understand. When you guys are talking about those happy mediums between those, like what does that even look like for you?
Yeah. If I can hop on real quick, Tanner.
Go ahead.
The best engagement I've gotten so far this month off of Twitter was posting a hashtag. It just said, hey, hashtag film Twitter. I'm planning my next series of episodes about directors in the 80s. Who do you feel were the most influential? And I got more reactions and more responses to that question with only one hashtag than I've gotten in a very long time, because I kept it simple, I kept it clean, and I didn't overload it with too much information. And I also sought engagement from the people who I were hoping will respond. That, to me, that's how you do it. It's just you keep it simple, you keep it direct, and you practically beg for engagement, but in a respectful way to get people to talk to you.
Okay, so my next follow-up to that is how did you convert those to people going and actually listening to your podcast? Like if you got them to engage on the hashtag, how did you then translate that into actual listens and downloads on your show?
Well, I haven't yet, because that's the next step. That's my next series. That series is not coming for a couple of months. But how I get people to listen to my show now is participating in these very spaces with Jeff, with Tanner, with Pixie, with Fuzz, with Greg, with all these people, and just getting myself out there and being an articulate person who has strong reactions to things, but is also trying to be as helpful as possible and not be as mean as possible. Being a positive person in these spaces and being someone that people can say, hey, that person gave good advice. Maybe I'll give their show a chance. I can tell you that my audience has gone up fairly well in the past 9-10 months since I started doing spaces and started meeting people like Jeff and Tanner and Fuzz and Pixie. So you just have to be there for the community, not just be in the community, but be there for the community. And now I get, every time I practically send out a tweet, as long as it's related to the show, I've got 3 or 4 people who will retweet it and like it and get the word out about it. And I can see my numbers grow when certain people are engaging with me. And I can even tell you the most downloaded episode that I had in 2021 was specifically because of Jeff, who suggested the topic of a specific episode. And then when I posted the episode, he put a call of action out to his supporters, to his followers, and said, hey, you should check out this episode. So to me, that's how I've gotten my engagement. It's just by being here for this community.
There's two things here that we're glossing over, Heather and Ed. The thing that made
I
that
am an incompetent hobbyist. Don't forget that.
Get out of here. The thing that Ed did was that he made the call to action, if we want to even call it that. He made it about the opinion of anyone who would see it. People love to talk about what they think. I mean, I do it all fucking time. People love to talk about what they think. They love to talk about themselves. And so it doesn't surprise me that tweet in particular that said, "What do you think is the most influential producer," or whatever it was, of the 1980s or whatever it was. That's probably why that post had so much engagement, because it wasn't "look at me, look at me." It was, "Hey, what do you think about this thing under this particular community hashtag that I know you're going to have an opinion about, because you wouldn't be following this hashtag if you didn't." And the other thing, Heather, is that, and I think I've said this in the last couple of spaces, so I hate to sound like a broken record, but we podcasters seem to think our podcast is the product, and we miss the fact that it is in fact we, the individual, the host, who are the product. And this is especially true if you're trying to monetize your podcast, because if you have 100 followers on your podcast, and you have 600 followers on Twitter, and you have 1,000 followers on your blog, and you have 800 followers on your fucking TikTok, and none of that crosses over, your scope of influence is not just the 100 followers that you have on your fucking podcast. It's all of those places. And it goes against, I think, what Fatima said earlier about not being on every platform. Well, maybe not completely against, but you need to be on more than one platform. Not for, and really not for any other reason than some people are never going to listen to podcasts. I mean, in the grand scheme of podcasts, like, you look at YouTube videos, you look at people who consume blog content, you look at people who look at fucking memes, and like the people who are spending time on podcasts is the smallest, most irrelevant, least consumed style of media on the internet. And we're all like, that's all we're going to do. And why are we having a hard time growing? Well, because nobody, in the grand scheme of things, nobody gives a shit about podcasts. They care more about YouTube videos. They care more about TikToks. They care more about blog posts. They care more about ridiculous memes. And so if you want to have influence out there in the world in your niche, whatever it is, whatever it's about, for me, it's about podcasting, then you've got to show up in those different places to serve the people who are on those platforms. You got to do that. You're not just a podcaster. You are a multimedia powerhouse, and you have to think of yourself that way. And you got to be in more than one place, and you got to be okay with your audience being split up across different places and having influence, not just at one home base. I think the idea of a home base just isn't relevant anymore, other than your own website for SEO purposes, which I know Michelle will appreciate.
To sum that up too, you're a brand, right? So when you're doing this, everything that you put out is your brand. It all falls out under the brand of, what listeners expect on your show is that same voice, values, that, humor, if you're using humor, all that stuff needs to come through on all those channels that you do. That the way that you are on your show needs to come through. And it's not about posting a link and saying, listen to my show. It's about interacting with and engaging with the audience that you want to have in the way that that your audience is accustomed to experiencing that.
Yeah, the conversion, Heather, isn't subscribing to your podcast. The conversion is the connection to you and respecting you and wanting to have more content from you. That's the conversion you want. It doesn't matter if they become a listener. Those people who interacted with Ed on that hashtag may never listen to his podcast, but they may really respect his opinion on Twitter. And, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. It's all good.
Yeah. So I've made this challenge in this space before, and I'll make it again. For anybody who has a podcast and you're posting things like we saw on Twitter, audiograms, whatever it is, I take my advice and take the next month and don't post a single thing about your podcast. Not one thing, not when your episodes are coming out, not whose guests you're being on, not a single thing, not even one. And instead make posts to curate your subject matter expertise. So to engage with the people who you're trying to influence, put the link to your podcast or whatever, or probably your website or your bio or something, hopefully your website, in your Twitter bio. You could put a nested link to your podcast if you want. But what I'll promise you is that you will not see your downloads go down. There are not people who are using Twitter as a notification that you've put out a podcast. Twitter is shit for that. Those posts that aren't interacted with are not seen by anyone. They are not seen by anyone. So Twitter doesn't show it to people. So post subject matter expertise, like the example Ed provided, interact on other people's posts, and stop talking about your podcast on social media for a short time. And what you'll see is you'll get some listeners because you contributed like a human.
And a great person to follow to see examples of this is Greg. He's not going to say that, but Greg's a good example. But another really good example is Ariel Nissenblatt, who has a podcast about podcasting herself and almost never fucking talks about it. She also works at Squadcast and almost never fucking talks about it. And she has, I think she's probably at 13,000 or so followers now, and she hasn't been on Twitter for that long. It's because she shows up and she says funny things that people find funny, have nothing to do with promoting her show, or she comes in with stats about podcasting, have nothing to do with promoting her show. And she's held up as one of, I think more people in the podcasting community think highly of Ariel than they think of me. And I think she's fucking great. I think you should follow her. If you follow me, you should definitely follow her.
I agree with you on that one, Tanner.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I had a quick question. Weren't we supposed to be hearing a pitch from somebody tonight?
Yes, he no call, no show. We'll see next week. Anyways, that hour went by super fast for me. I don't know about everybody else.
It went by slow because it was an hour and 20 minutes.
You're so stoic.
It felt like an hour and 20 minutes.
All right, so we did have one person that we didn't get to. They had to drop off. It was a Notorious Nightmare podcast. They just wanted to mention that seasons have been good for them because they are new. They started out unorganized, and it was a fresh start each time they had a new season. They're on season 3, and everything about our pod is changing with massive improvements. Love to be able to shout out yourself, Pixie, Greg, and Tanner, since they have been the ones who have dropped good tidbits of advice that has been positive for us. So that's another example of how some of the things we've talked about this evening have helped a new podcaster.
Good sweaty tidbits.
Good sweaty tidbits. I will leave that as my closing thoughts as we go to you, Greg.
Hot titties.
No, come on, Ed. Thank you everybody for coming to the space. I thought it was really fun. Especially if this is your first time here. We do this every week, and you never know who might show up. And sometimes you might hope that people don't show up, but end up showing up. So, sorry for that. And you can. I wasn't talking about you, Dave. I was talking about Tanner, clearly.
For sure.
Just kidding.
Hey, Greg, you want to tell me how this is available in podcast form too?
I was getting there. So the website is podcastingpowerhour.com. We're still waiting on a couple logos, but I went ahead and published it in its non-finished form for today because we're all podcasters and we know how it goes. But this is available via podcast. And I even put some of our extracurricular conversations that don't make it in the hour on the end and the beginning. Obviously I cut out anything sensitive, but if you drop early or you came in late, podcastingpowerhour.com or any podcast app.
So a great way to check out all the previous episodes for sure. Thank you, Greg. Mayor McFudd, closing thoughts on this evening.
No, I thought this was a great conversation. And to be honest, I'm coming up on my 52nd weekly episode of my hyper-local show. And I've been dreading whether to take a break or not because I'm a little bit burnt out. But I was just interviewed on a local show, and I was about to take a break, got interviewed on a local show, and I'm like, oh shit, I can't take a break now because people are expecting content. And I don't want to squander the PR. So, but this has been very helpful because I think I'm going to either plan out a way to at least take a 2 or 4 week break and then come back. But it's been very helpful as always, Jeff, Greg, even you, Tanner. It's been fun. And Jim, I still owe you some stuff, and I've got like 3 pages of things for you, and I will get those to you soon. So, but thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
No problem, Fuzz. Jim, speaking of which, you've been very quiet this evening.
Oh, I've been respectful, and Fuzz, whenever you get around to it, I know you're busy, so I respect that. But I will well, we haven't talked about this tonight. I see a lot of people listening, and I know we're always short on time because it's only an hour, but if you have a question, I know Jeff's good about answering them. If you want fuck in your inbox, you'd message Tanner, and even Greg would be good to ask a question to, or me, or anybody around here. We all love answering questions. You don't have to wait till the Monday night show. Answer them anytime via direct message.
Well said, Jim. Pixie, I'm going to give you a second to talk about your space on Wednesday. It's a little bit more laid back than this one, I would say.
It is. It's every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, which we call Pixie Time. But I want to highlight somebody who is starting up women's spaces in podcasting. For those of you ladies who want something even more laid back, Poppy, who is down there in the listenership, she has opened up her own spaces. And I think there should be more spaces for podcasters. Thanks, Jeff.
Lovely. Excellent use of your time. Speaking of somebody that won't use excellent use of their time, Tanner, go ahead.
Listen, I'm the host of Good Morning Podcasters, and I was really lucky enough to have Dan Hewley from Focusrite send me a working model of their new Vocaster audio interface device. It allows you to plug your phone in, so you can take phone calls or plug a professional microphone into, for example, your next Twitter space. It's pretty cool. And I interview Dan on tomorrow's episode. So if you want to tune in and listen to that, he gives us like a 20-minute rundown of the product. It is really cool. He did not sponsor the episode. There are no affiliate links. But if you do hear the episode and decide you want to purchase one of these, email me after you make the purchase, because he's promised to give special Focusrite swag bags to anybody who buys the product through the link that I've made for myself to send people over there. There's nothing in it for me. There's something in it for you. So hope you'll listen, and I hope it'll help.
Tanner, I'm surprised you actually are able to, interview people, giving them time to talk, since you enjoy doing it so much.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that.
Hey, before we go to Dave, I just want to point out that Tanner, Jeff, Fuzz, and I and crew are all very cordial behind the scenes. We're just giving it to Tanner pretty thick today, so don't think it's all in love.
Oh God,
for those
yeah,
listening.
these guys are always giving it to me thick. Thanks for that, Greg. That won't follow me around the internet forever.
It's important to mention that because I have had several people ask, "Hey, do you hate that Tanner guy?"
And you go, only secretly.
No, look, listen, everybody. We're all white dudes of a certain age, and the way we show that we love each other is that we talk shit. That's what we do.
It's Monday night, so you got to have the heel on the wrestling program. Tanner, come on.
Tanner, despite the shit that I give you, you are the only show that I listen to every single day. And Dave, I also listen sometimes in the shower. So it's kind of feeling gross and a little weird now, but here we are.
Two dudes washing their nether regions, listening to Tanner.
I think
that is so weird.
I think you're giving both of them too much credit. I don't know that they wash their nether regions. Not daily.
That's all I watch, Tanner.
Over and over and over.
That's me. I have a very selective shower.
We're all one big happy family. I do want to mention, Michelle, thank you for joining us. It was nice meeting you, and you had some great input on this particular episode or evening. So thank you.
Michelle ain't never coming back.
Yeah. All right, let's end it. Final thoughts with the Hall of Famer, David Jackson.
I wish I had something like really cool to like just drop the mic, but it was, as always, it's always fun to hang out with you guys. And if you want to take a break, take a break. If you don't. It's really, I don't know. I don't think the world's going to end if you take a break. So it's your show. Do what you want. I think that would be my final thought. Here's what you do is you go, that's it. I'm going to take a break on whatever date and then see what it feels like. Because that way you'll have time to change your mind before you actually take your break. So it's my final thought.
Dave, talk about your live. Talk about your live space.
My live space is Ask the Podcast Coach every Saturday morning at 10:30 Eastern, where much like this, you can come in and ask questions, and very similar to this, with people in the chat room all bust on each other, and it's a lot of fun. And if you got questions, we will try to answer them in some sort of organized fashion. So askthepodcastcoach.com.
There you go. If you want to see a bunch of dudes bust on each other, you can go check out Dave's podcast.
Tanner, come on. Don't point them out.
He also ignores my questions during the live show.
I don't know.
Ask good ones, Jeff.
No, Dave, seriously, thanks for joining us, and thanks everybody. Hopefully you come back next week for more Podcasting Power Hour, Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Thank you for listening to the Podcasting Power Hour. Everyone is free to participate on Twitter Spaces every Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. To join, just follow Jeff at podcast_father or Greg at Indie Drop-In. If you found this podcast helpful, go into your podcast app and write a quick review. Other podcasters will see it and know this show is worth listening to. Also, I'll put a few links in the show notes for ways you can support the show. I think by now you know we love our coffee. Have a great week. The ending was the best part. Tanner, don't say it.
I think he's gone already.
Oh. Oh, man. That was a lot of fun.
It was a good hour and a half.
Greg, yeah. I enjoyed your insights on Tanner's show about the whole, Apple and Google and all that all the additional stats.
Oh, yeah. It was nice to get a little, like we talked about that today from Fatima. So it was nice to get some validation from a super expert.
So, all right, gentlemen and ladies, I'll see you.
All right, Dave. See you. Jim, what were you saying? Your mic sounds like it's underwater, or you're calling us from the bathroom or something.
He's watching.
What's happening?
He's watching wrestling.
Oh.
What was she mentioned the secondary site she was that she had for podcasters?
It's called co-hostpodcasting.com. And it looks like hosting that focuses on audience analytics and trending and things like that, just based on what I've seen. But I'm going to look at it a little closer.
Keep me up to date.
Report back to Jim.
Yeah, I will. Thanks for that, Jim. Please wait patiently by your inbox.
Yeah, I was going to say, that way your research is valuable. At least somebody's looking forward to it.
Well, thanks, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and jump off here. I've got to get to the airport at 4 a.m. to go to Texas for work.
Ooh, you're going to catch on fire.
I am. I'm debating if I should even go to sleep or not at this point. So we'll see.
What city are you going to? You going to Austin or?
It's a city right outside of Longview.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't matter. It's LA.
Oh yeah, no. I was just gonna tell you some fun places to go to lunch if you were going somewhere fun, but you're not. So.
Nope. Just work. Damn work.
All right. See everybody later. See you next Monday.
Thank you for checking out this episode of Indie Podcaster. I really do appreciate it. If you're interested in learning more about this podcast, you can go to podcastfather.com. If you're interested in all the different kind of work that I'm doing, you can go to jefftownsend.media. Contact form on there, various other different podcasts and projects that I'm involved in that I think you will enjoy. But again, thank you for supporting me, and make sure you support Indie Drop-In Network like we covered in the beginning. Get your podcast featured on there. Until I see you next time, take care of yourself and keep being you and keep being great.
Jeff Townsend Media. CG, good night.
And the question is, do I stay here?
Will you be back? Are you gonna come back? Will you be back? Are you coming back?